One of our more colorful theme gardens this year is a collection of cannas, and I've got several named cultivars that I want to show you, but first I'd like to give you a little bit more information about growing cannas, and I'd also like to clear up something I said a little bit earlier about where cannas originated. Some sources list India as the country where cannas call home, and one of the common names for cannas is Indian shot, and that refers to the very hard seeds that they produce. These were used in some of their primitive weapons, but the plants that have supplied a lot of the genetic material for all of our modern hybrids are actually native to South America. So cannas are native to an area a little bit closer to home here in the Western Hemisphere. Well, cannas don't require just a whole lot of maintenance during the growing season other than keeping them well watered during dry spells, but they will look tidier and they'll bloom a little bit more if we keep them deadheaded. Now, there's a trick to deadheading cannas, and I think a lot of gardeners inadvertently cut off some of the flower buds when they're deadheading their cannas. I'll show you what I mean. You can see right here that this inflorescence has dropped all of its flowers. They've faded. Some of these brown ones are still hanging on here. And I think the natural reaction would be to come in and cut this stem off back here at the first leaf. Well, we don't want to do that because if we look right up here, we can see a sheath wrapped around a lot of buds for the next inflorescence that's going to be coming along. So what we want to do is to kind of trace this little stem back and just remove this portion and leave that to go ahead and bloom. Now sometimes this little sheath that encloses those buds will be pretty small, and I'll show you over here what I mean by that. If you look at this faded inflorescence right here, you don't really see a sheath. This one looks empty, this one looks empty, but if we peel it open here, look down in there, you can see that very small little pointed sheath coming on, and that's where the next inflorescence would be. So again, we don't want to cut that off back lower, we're going to cut it off up here. That way these cannas will bloom quicker and look a lot better, a lot faster. Well, we don't spray a lot of pesticides on our cannas here, although they do get fed upon by some caterpillars and grasshoppers, but generally those pests don't do a great deal of damage. Occasionally we'll have a caterpillar bite a hole in a rolled up leaf, and then when that leaf unfurls, you get that line of holes right across the face. But again, generally the pests on cannas don't do a great deal of damage. Of course, cannas like to grow out in the full sun, they like plenty of moisture, and they like a soil that's enriched with organic matter, or at least one that's been loosened up very well before planting. Now, the flowers will look better on hot, windy days if they have some protection from the scorching southwestern winds. You can see our bed right here has some protection from those winds by this row of Hollywood junipers. A lot of people refer to the underground parts of cannas as bulbs, and that's fine. The structure is actually an underground stem known botanically as a rhizome. Now, if you've ever dug up a Bermuda grass or Johnson grass, you'll know that those plants also have white rhizomes, and they are nowhere near as large or robust as the cannas though. But the rhizomes will spread out from the plant. They'll make colonies around the mother rhizome, and in no time at all you can have a pretty good sized clump of cannas. So when you're planting them, keep that in mind and give them enough room so you can enjoy them to their full potential. Well, I hope you've got your pen and paper ready to write down the varieties of these that you like the most, so you can try to find those. We'll start right here with this canna. This is called Journey's End, and it's a plant that I really like. It's got a really neat color combination there with those two pastel colors, the yellow and pink together. Something a little bit unique in a canna. And this has been around for quite a while, but this is the first time I've ever grown it, and I believe the first time we've had it here at our studio garden. Right here we have Aida, and it's a neat peachy pink colored canna. And the description said this only got to about 48 inches tall, and obviously it's gotten quite a bit taller. But a wonderful plant. This is part of the Grand Opera series of cannas that were bred in Los Angeles back in the 1930s. Right beside it here is the canna that we were deadheading just a few minutes ago. This is called Golden Girl, and this is absolutely one of my favorites. I've grown it for about 3 or 4 years in my garden. It's a little bit harder to find than some of the others, but the golden color of those petals is just incredibly intense, and it's kind of helped to be set off by those red-orange spots down in the center there. This looks really good when it's combined with dark blue or purple flowers. Right down here we've got a shorter canna. This is Apricot Dream, and as you can see, it's sort of a pale apricot color, and we get some sort of red-orange colors down in the center of those blooms. But this is a very good canna for containers because of its short size. Well, right up here is a canna that Jolene told us was one of her favorites, and it's quickly becoming one of my favorites too. This is Rosmarinus Cole, and these plants not only have this orange and red combination in the flowers, but they have such a huge inflorescence. When we were at the canna farm, these were definitely noticeable because of the large amount of flowers you could see at one time. Just makes an incredible display in the garden. This was bred by a canna grower in Australia. Well, right here we have what some consider to be the closest to a white canna. This is Ermine, and it's really a very pale yellow, sort of a gladiolus flowered canna, but from a distance it does look white, and it combines with the other colors very well and gives a really nice display in the garden. Well, right behind Ermine we've got a tall canna that I really like. It's called Lenape, and this one's got a really unique mottling effect with the yellow and orange colors in the flowers. This is one that was developed at Longwood Gardens in Pennsylvania. Well, right up here we have a very nice canna as well. This is one called Salmon Pink, sometimes referred to as Fitzer's Salmon Pink. It was bred by Fitzer, a German canna breeder, and it's another canna that has a very large inflorescence. Just look at the number of petals, or the number of flowers you see there, and all these other buds coming out. The Salmon Pink canna is another one that's not too tall, and I like it because of its powdery green leaves. Kind of gives it a little bit of distinction from some of the other cannas. And this is another one that would work well in containers. Flowers aren't the only reason to grow cannas. Some of the newer varieties have really spectacular foliage. Back in the corner of our canna garden is a new variety called Red Stripe, and it does have red flowers, but the reason to grow this plant is its beautiful leaves of green and red. They can be nearly 2 feet long, and the plant itself can get upwards to 8 or 9 feet tall. Another dramatic foliage plant is Canna Australia. It's got brilliant red flowers, but the leaves of the plant are truly spectacular. They're so dark red, they're almost brown or black. You can do some really neat things with this out in the garden. Now, these plants don't overwinter well as rhizomes, so you'll have to buy these from someone who's growing them in a greenhouse, so they'll always be a little more expensive. Right back here we have Canna Tropicana, also goes by the name of Phasion, and it has orange flowers, but the reason to grow this plant is because of the breathtaking foliage. Just look at the variegation of the Canna Tropicana.